as Renee's dad finished his set, which is what you call a standard set of movements in a martial arts combat style that we use to practice the different forms that are within the combat style. He took a deep breath and then turned to me and Renee as we had just entered the room. "Ah, Renee," he said, with a cheerful smile on his face. "How's my baby girl doing?" I'm doing great, Dad," Renee replied. "And as promised, this is that friend I was telling you about. Victor Barron, resident martial arts expert in Black Rock Falls, that is. He just claimed the regional championships as well. In Jiao Kun Do, was it?" "Yeah, that's it," I replied. Hello, Mr. Hollowfield. Renee has told me great things about your martial arts skill, so I was hoping to talk with you about it. I figured someone with your level of training and experience might be a good person to ask about some important topics regarding my own training and experience." "Is that so? Well, I've been looking forward to meeting Renee's young friend as well. And you say that you'd like some insight," he replied, beginning to straighten his gi somewhat. "Well, if that be the case, I'd say the best way I can give you insight is if I understand you a little bit better. And you never truly understand someone's martial arts skill until you fight them yourself. So, what do you say, young man? Would you like a sparring session?" As he said the words, I couldn't help but get a big smile on my face. I probably looked like an idiot. "That would be awesome," I replied. "I actually brought my gi just in case you decided you wanted to have a little sparring session. If you give me a minute, I'll get changed." "No problem, young man. You'll find that there's a changing room at the opposite end of my training dojo. Right over there," he said, pointing to a brown door on the other end of the room. "Alrighty, I'll be right back," I said, as I picked up a brisk jogging pace, heading for the room and going in, closing the door behind me. It didn't take long for me to change into my gi. Quite frankly, I was ecstatic about the whole thing. Can't believe I'm getting to have a sparring session with somebody with this much skill. "It's gonna be awesome," I thought to myself. Finally, I finished changing into my gi and stepped outside, putting my book bag with my regular schoolwork and my change of clothes in it, right outside of the door. As I stepped out, it looked like Renee and her father were having a conversation, but I couldn't really tell about what. But for whatever reason, they got hushed once I entered the room. Mr. Hollowfield seemed somewhat happy when he saw me in my gi, having a sly smile as he turned in my direction, walking to the center of the training dojo. "All right, here's your opportunity to show me what you're made of," he said, still holding that sly grin. "But I do want to tell you that my practice matches are a bit different than what you might expect. Being trained at a dojo, you most likely know about rules and order, that when two combatants fight, there are always rules to the interaction. Well, you can just forget all of those. In any sort of real combat situation, there are no rules, no standard for combat and movements. You're not going to be graded on a lack of form here, nor fighting dirty, using underhanded tactics, or things that are perceived in that light. In a real fight, it's anything goes. The winner takes all, always. For your own safety, I'll stick to the rules myself. However, I'd advise you to bring your A game. I don't want to catch you holding back, and holding stringent to the rules will only be a limitation for you. I want to see what kind of man you really are when it comes right down to it." Renee's dad said, still giving me that intense stare down, as he shifted his stance, placing one foot back and holding a fighting stance. By the way he was positioned, it looked like he was taking a basic defensive stance. "All right," I said to myself, "game on," as I took my stance in front of him, pressing one foot forward, clenching both fists tightly and glaring him back. I took a deep breath as Renee began to back away from the training area. And just as I had done 1,000 times before, I took a moment to measure my opponent. Weight, size, arm length, leg length, stance, looking for weak points. At this point, I had learned to do it in quite a flash. It was not something that took a lot of time for me to do. One of the key facets of Xiao Kung Do is measuring your opponent as quickly as possible and striking even faster. The moment I finished measuring, I lunged forward. A set of rapid steps, often used in Xiao Kung Do to make quick distance without losing strength in your footing. I lashed out with a quick set of punches, aiming for the important spots, while trying to stay weary of any counterattacks. Xiao Kung Do also focuses heavily on evasion, being able to see your enemy's attacks coming and not being there when they're hit. An attack that doesn't strike its opponent uses twice the amount of energy as an attack that does. But quite frankly, things weren't getting off to a good start. As I threw my flurry of punches, he dodged every one of them. Rapid attacking was a specialty of Xiao Kung Do, and yet it was like he was reading me. In a flash, he moved out of the way of each and every one. In fact, he made it look easy, using a mixture of basic movements and palm deflections. Before I was about to finish with the last punch in that set, he lashed out with a kick. Most other people probably would have been caught more off guard, as people tend to wait until the attack sequence finishes before striking. But this wasn't an amateur I was dealing with. He knew that the sequence was coming to an end, and decided to lash a counterattack before then, which would take most people off their guard, usually scoring a hit easily. It's a trap that many people fall into when they're just starting in Xiao Kung Do. Luckily, I saw it, just in time to narrowly evade. Using a rapid backstep, I moved just out of the way, feeling it skim my clothing as it swept by. He was not pulling his punches. That was a hard kick, and fast too. But before I could even get my bearings, he rushed in again, closing the distance rapidly, countering with a flurry of punches of his own, mixing strikes aimed at the head and body. Once again, I couldn't recognize the style, and he was fast, way faster than me. After the first 3, I completely lost it. I couldn't track them anymore, after which he landed 2 punches to my head, dizzying me a bit, and as I tried to back away, he swept in again, this time completely ignoring the regular fight distance that people use to impose even conflict and a measure of defense. Instead, he rushed in so close that our bodies were actually pressed together for an instant. And it was in that moment that I felt his hands on my center section, around my abdominal muscles. I suddenly felt a massive impact from no distance at all. It was so strong it took me right off my feet. I flew back nearly 3 feet, landing on my back with, an intense pain in my stomach. I did not expect it to hurt that much. I mean, part of my basic gi was some armaments, defensive padding, meant to soften blows, but that didn't feel like it got softened at all. But as is tactics in Xiao Kung Do, there is no slowing down, even for pain. Part of how the martial arts style works is that it's relentless, meaning you have to be relentless. Even if your opponent strikes you, you don't stop. Even if you're knocked down, you don't stay down. The entire fighting style is based on making everything fast. Recovery, defense, evasion, and attack all at a pace too fast to handle. So, I lifted my legs above me, kicking to my feet in a single movement. The moment my stance was steady, I rushed forward, lashing out with another set of punches, this time throwing in some basic kicks towards his low section. But those were just distraction. As he was preparing for the next low kick, I swept in close. Spinning around, I gave him a backwards heel kick. Hard enough that most people would have been knocked off their feet, but he barely flinched. It only sent him back a step or so, and he instantly regained his footing. And as he did, that sly smile peeked up on his face again. "So, you do have some skill after all," he said, peering over to me, which quite frankly sent shivers down my spine.